I am sleepy, but I'm going to do this. Okay, so let's talk about the holy mother of all writing advice. Let's talk about show, don't tell. And let's talk about it in regards to comics, okay? So this phrase, while not 100% true by any means, can basically be applied to like 95% of all amateur prose. The truth is that by the nature of prose, writers tend to write in a very disengaged manner. The rule comes down to understanding the difference between show and tell and using them effectively when needed. But, that's kind of like the basics, a little confusing if you're new to it. Because of the way it's presented, I find that this advice slips through the cracks a bit in the comic community. Art is visual, and theoretically, you're never going to be able to avoid showing, right? Right? Well, of course not. The first issue I find in comics is that it is very easy to come under the assumption that show happens in panels and telling happens in the bubbles. While there may be a little merit to this idea, showing and telling aren't split apart so simply. Telling is not words, otherwise prose would be 100% telling. Telling is directly giving information. Showing is experiencing and requires inference. To make matters more confusing, they exist kind of on a spectrum. They're not completely separate things. But now, much like in prose, telling is somehow the default in comics for new writers. Despite the addition of visuals, a reliance on telling develops out of poor visual storytelling tools. They can come from an avoidance of drawing difficult things. Cats, horses, backgrounds. If you don't want to draw it, if you can't draw it, it's not going to be shown. An establishing shot of an intricate cathedral becomes a line of dialogue in these cases. Like, this cathedral sure is intricate rather than showing it. And thus, unnecessary telling is born. These can be some of the easiest problems to identify, but kind of the hardest to fix because you have to learn how to draw the thing that you can't draw. But if you want to get better at things, drawing them is kind of the first step. Being able to get a read you want is hard, and it's something you need to work on, or your artist needs to work on. A good form of practice is to write wordless comics. You don't have to complete them either, but doing simple thumbnails can be a great way to learn how to use visuals for communication effectively. But if you do feel confident with visual communication, like, what then? When do you show rather than tell? Well, the answer is anytime you give information at all, ask yourself, would this be better shown? The answer isn't always going to be yes. Some good indicators that it is supposed to be yes show is if your information has emotional weight, the thing that you're talking about is super cool and cool to show, the information is important, or it needs to be like misleadingly important, or if you've promised this information previously, meaning like that there's hype built around it, like those are reasons that you should lean towards showing the information, because showing is going to give more focus. Reasons that you want to lean towards telling are things that require clarity. The information, or if the information is of little consequence, or, and kind of unique to comics, if that information can't be visually represented. An example of this would be a character commenting on a smell rather than describing it through prose, because you can't really do that. And there's some ways to visually show smell, but not specific. I don't know. There are situations where like there is something abstract and you literally can't do anything but tell. So that's that would give you an out. But you should always try. Sometimes you can show these abstract things in a clear way through visuals. Anyways, getting distracted. And all that kind of comes with the reminder that there's also always going to be a visual happening because it is comics. Emotions occur almost like 100% on the show side in comics through the expressions of the characters. It can also exist on a bit of a spectrum too. Emotions can kind of come from showing a lot, and also there is the fact of dialogue. Like, you can show and tell through dialogue because subtext is very showy. It's showing emotion without explicitly stating, I am sad, I am angry. It's using both your visuals and your different tones to portray these emotions rather than straight up telling them. a lot of the basic ideas of show don't tell end up coming into play through the dialogue. But I just want to kind of remind you that, like, no matter what, no matter the medium you're working in, you can fall into these hang-ups where you are very telly, you are very, like, direct, and you end up like losing engagement through these methods. So reevaluate things. Always look at what you're trying to portray and think, is this the most interesting way to go about this? And if it isn't the most interesting way to go about this, is it necessary for me to delve into it deeper? Anyways, if you're new, you're most likely you aren't showing enough. And I'd really encourage you to keep doing those questions and keep paying attention to how you package information. What I found in writing prose is that I never really felt I was fully I was writing to my full potential until I fully grasped the concept of show, don't tell. So embracing showing and learning to rein yourself in when showing isn't needed, eventually with telling, with necessary telling, it's like a wonderful feeling. And it really opens you up to like the full scope of writing. You'll know it's kind of happening to you when table scenes and talking head scenes start driving you crazy and you just want action, you want something going on. You start thinking visually this looks boring in my head. How do I make it look exciting? Anyways, that's all I have for today. I am hecking tired, if you can't tell by the tone of my voice. If I don't tell, I bet it's showing. If you like me, like me. If you want to see more videos, frickin' do the things. Do I have to explain this to you? I'm not gonna explain it to you. Do one of the things. I still like you guys, no matter what. You're cool kids. Don't let your dreams. Yeah. Goodbye. What's going on?